Hi, this is Tom Winifrith recording my video. I think I've got the light sound issue right, but let's hope so. It's the day after West Ham won 4-1. Great result, obviously the highlight of my week. I spent the latter part of the week contemplating a few big projects for the next 6 months and how I was going to address them, but B, perhaps more interest to you. The nature of the AIM market and why smaller company shares aren't moving ahead as they should. To the less interesting part first, I do have 3 or 4 big projects which will kick off at some stage between November and the middle of next year. So it's a bit of a debt clearing exercise. I'm conscious I'm 1 article behind for the Christian Science Monitor, gripping piece on Albania, the most dynamic economy in Europe. I'm about 7 or 8 articles behind on Seeking Alpha in the US on shorting Chinese stocks. There's a little bit of catch up there to go. And I'm also still not delivered any of my 3 books to the publishers. So I'm taking a few weeks away from London. It tends to be terribly distracting. The Christmas menus, the new food menus at Real Man Pizza are ready to go. I'm not needed there. Aldo is perfectly capable of running the restaurant. And therefore I'm away from London for a few weeks just to do the catch-up so that the decks are clear for late November, early December, getting everything else off the launch pad. In terms of the more interesting thing, the issue of AIM stocks, I had a guy bumble into the restaurant the other day and he says all it needs for AIM to take fire, to catch fire, investors to make real returns, is for new tax breaks, make AIM stocks all ISAable or something. I don't think that's the answer. I think one can tinker at the edges, and no doubt people will be talking about how you present AIM better, you attract foreign investors. But I think there's a real problem with UK small caps, which is perhaps symptomatic of problems in the UK as a whole. The UK I take an increasingly bearish view on a sort of 10-year view, and I think that may well be the theme of book number 4 for 2013. We're just not competitive. In terms of how much we charge for the services we provide. I mean, there are other fundamental issues, but that is one of the issues which we've got to address. And again, I think AIM reflects that in sort of microcosm. There are, 1,200, 1,500 companies on AIM. One of the books for the autumn is how many a book just listing the resource stocks, which I think could and should go bust over the next 12 months. Resource stocks as a whole have had a interesting 2 or 3 years. There was a big boom about 2 years ago, and that allowed an enormous number of companies to raise capital, both here and also in Australia and on the TSX. There are 3,500 mining juniors on the TSX. Now most of those will never ever produce anything. Frankly, a large number of them are run as lifestyle companies. The directors take out a large fee and they justify it by saying, look, it's a competitive market, you've got to pay to attract talent. It strikes me that quite a few of the people running TSX and AIM listed resource stocks don't have a great degree of talent. When you meet a truly class act, I had lunch last week with Declan Golan and Linda Naylor of Charac Gold. They are a class act, they know what they're doing and they will deliver. And you compare them to some of the other riffraff that wanders in through my doors, and you realise actually that people running some of these companies aren't that good, yet they're paid an enormous amount of money. Resource stocks, the pay is just totally out of kilter, but across the whole of the AIM market, boardroom pay is an issue. If you put £1 million, if a small company on AIM raises £1 million, by the time it's taken out the cost of that exercise, you're down to about £950 anyway, perhaps a bit less. But then on a 2-year view, by the time you've paid for the board and also the advisors, and advisors charge far too much as for being on AIM, and the other associated PLC costs, you probably have very little to actually go back into the business. And that is I think the fundamental problem for AIM, that the costs of maintaining a PLC quote in London, but also supporting boardroom access, mean that you'd be mad to put money into a placing by many of these companies, because it's not going to actually go on growing the business. And so when you speak to fellows like Nigel Ray, Nigel's saying increasingly that what he wants to back are private businesses where you don't have these excessive PLC costs. And also, if you're backing a management team, they're not going to bloat their own salaries because their interest is an equity interest in the business. Their interests are aligned with yours. And I think on the lower reaches of the London market, that sort of relationship has got out of kilter. Now, I'm not sure what the answer is. There will be individual companies where maybe a management team gets toppled and someone goes in to realise value for shareholders. I see there's this interesting battle between our pal brokerman Dan and the Sefton Resources Shareholder Action Group trying to oust Jim Ellison. Now, I think that probably would be good for Sefton, but Sefton's one small little company. There are a whole load out there, and there's not going to be change as a result, I think, of shareholder action across the board. I can't see that the authorities who run AIM, the LSE, are going to be able to be in a position to make those changes. I suspect it's just market forces. Eventually, folks will stop writing cheques for enterprises where they cannot get a return. I think that would be a good thing. It would be good in that it would clear out this chaff and it would set new benchmarks going forward. It would also be good for most of the companies on AIM, which are sort of decent companies of a reasonable size, where there is a genuine investment case. But right now, you meet the CEOs of these companies. I met Paul Atherley of Lation Resources about 6 weeks ago, and he's running a good company, and the shares are probably very cheap. But people say, "Oh, Paul, you're on AIM. You're there with all the other riffraff," and that kind of holds back investor sentiment towards the good companies on AIM as well. So that is, I think, one of the issues which has got to be played out over the next 12 months. My view on the markets is that there is value out there, but also that investors are going to be reluctant to put money in. They're going to be reluctant to put money in until the euro crisis is resolved, and I think some of the stuff coming out of Spain makes it quite clear that the euro crisis is not going to be resolved. There are chill macroeconomic wins in the United States, which will become apparent after the election rather than before, and also in China. So there are big issues, and I think that's going to mean that it's very hard for companies to raise money. In a sense, that is a good thing. If it means there's a culling of the weakest and an end to some of the boardroom excess, then that is something which we should all welcome. Does it mean you should dump equities altogether? No, because it's very hard to sort of call a turn on these things. If you are able to buy into a company on 2 times cash flow or some other hugely attractive metric, then I suggest that you probably should. I don't think the downside is going to be that significant, and when sentiment turns, there really will be pretty meaningful upside. So I'm cautious on equities. I think selective value, but I do think there needs to be a bit of a cull. So that will be the theme of one of the books, which hopefully will be out by the end of November as an e-book. I'll be spending the next few weeks away from London, making sure that there are 3 e-books you can put in your Christmas e-stocking, or however people do these things. There will be blogs. It'll be slightly lighter blogging, but there will be content on the site over the next few weeks. Maybe not 7 articles a day, but 4.5. I'll take it easy. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for continuing to read the site, and I will be back in a week's time.